And here was the game changer. He says, people who are interested come up with stories, reasons, and excuses all the time about why they can't or why it can't be done. And people who are committed upgrade their identity and their beliefs to match the destiny they want. And then they level up their skills and habits to take the action required to achieve every one of their goals.
Markets, speculation, and risk. This is the Chat with Traders podcast.
Thank you for tuning into episode 317 of the Chat with Traders podcast. This is Tessa, your co-host, and we've got a great episode for you today. As traders, we're familiar with backtesting strategies, aren't we? But the part of trading nobody can really backtest is your brain. And if you've ever said, I know what to do, and still didn't do it, this one's for you. Today, my co-host Ian chats with our guest, John Assaraf, one of the leading behavioral performance and mindset experts in the world. He's a serial entrepreneur who has built 5 multimillion-dollar companies, including growing a real estate franchise to over $4 billion in annual real estate sales, and co-founded a tech company that went public on NASDAQ with a peak market capitalization in the billions. He's the founder and CEO of Neuroscience, a neuroscience-based company dedicated to helping people retrain their brains for success, and the author of multiple books that have become New York Times bestsellers. Some listeners may also recognize John from his appearance in The Secret, where his work reached a much broader audience. Now, today's episode is not really about markets, but it's more about performance. Because whether you're trading, building a business, or trying to break a pattern that keeps showing up, the real bottleneck, it's the part of the brain designed to protect certainty, comfort, and identity, even when those very things are holding us back. John has a powerful origin story, from growing up in scarcity and chaos to a defining moment at 19 years old when a mentor asked him a question that completely changed the direction of his life. And you'll hear that question soon enough in the interview. In this conversation, we also talk about why willpower alone fails, why people keep snapping back to familiar results, and what actually needs to change for new behaviors to stick. And there's so much more. If you've ever felt capable of more, but keep reverting to the same outcomes, this conversation will land. To me, this is one of those episodes where you will want to listen to at least twice. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're so pleased to present John Assaraf.
Well, John, I'd like to welcome you to Chat with Traders.
Thank you, Ian. Great to be with you.
You've had quite a fascinating story from the streets to building multi-million-dollar companies. Can you briefly take us back to where you grew up and the beliefs about wealth that you absorbed in that environment?
Sure. I was born in Israel, and then when I was 5, my parents were tired of wars, and so they decided to move my brother and sister and I and them to Montreal, Canada. And in Montreal, I fell 2 years behind because I didn't speak English going into grade 1. And so I fell 2 years behind, felt like I wasn't good enough or smart enough. I was a rambunctious, energetic kid. And I thought I just wasn't smart enough. So I got into a lot of trouble as a kid. And my father was a cab driver trying to make it in a new city. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic and a gambler. So at the end of every day, he usually owed people money because he was at the horse races losing money or playing cards and losing money and then drinking and then coming home. And so it created a very, very tumultuous relationship between my parents, and a very, very challenging one for me because he would take on some of his anger with his fists and legs on me as a kid because I was getting into trouble. So money was scarce. He did illegal things when he was younger. And I was taught that in order to succeed in life, you've got to screw other people, to get ahead. And when I was in my teens, I got involved in a small street gang, and we did breaking and entries, and I sold drugs, and I did inhale, I did sell them, I did sniff them, I did do everything with them. So I was guilty as charged on several occasions. And that was really my upbringing, and I spent a lot of time on the streets with people that were mini hoodlums. We didn't have guns. Back then we had knives and nunchucks. We were all into martial arts to protect ourselves from the fights we would get into. And we had to be protected when we were doing illegal things. And that was, 12 to 19 years young. And I got in trouble with the law, detention centers, the whole works. But I remember specifically, the discussion around money was that wealthy people lie, steal, and cheat to make it. Money was scarce, and it wasn't reserved for my family or me. And that was kind of like the beginning of my belief system. And then my brother, who was concerned for my safety, had a gentleman by the name of Alan Brown that he taught tennis to. My brother was a tennis coach. And he asked Alan Brown if he'd at least talk to me to try and knock some sense into me and maybe even offer me a job. And at the time, I was working for Philips Electronics in their shipping department, making $1.65 an hour, opening boxes, closing boxes, and I hated it. And so I took the train from Montreal to Toronto to meet this man for lunch. And at lunch, he asked me a whole bunch of questions. But the thing that transitioned and transformed my life, there was one man, one question, one answer, transformed my life. I was sitting at lunch with him. It was like 12:30 in the afternoon. He asked me, what were my goals? And I said, well, I'd like to get a better job. I'd like to buy a car. I'd like to move out of my parents' house. And he says, well, that's all nice and dandy. He said, but don't you have any bigger goals? I said, nope. So I remember he reached in his briefcase. He took out this document, and it was a goal-setting guide. And the first question, he asked me if I would answer them. I said, of course, I'll answer the questions. The first question was, at what age do you want to retire? And I was 19 at the time. And I'm like, retire? I want a job. What do you mean retire? My father, is in his 40s. He can't retire. So I said, what am I supposed to put here, Mr. Brown? He said, just pick a number. I said, is 45 okay? Sure, put it down. The second question, that's funny, I'm chuckling now, says, upon retirement, how much net worth do you want to have? And so I said to Mr. Brown, I said, excuse me, what does net worth mean? I didn't know. How much income do you want to make? And I said, what am I supposed to put here? And he said, well, just put the amount of money you want. I said, is $10,000 a month okay? Sure, put it down. Anyway, and he said, what kind of car do you want? I wrote it down, Mercedes. What kind of house do you want? 4-bedroom house. And it just had me writing down this answers to questions I'd never considered around my life and what I want to have, do, be, and achieve. And after about 10 minutes, I gave him back the paper and he looked at it. He goes, this is really good. He said, I'm going to ask you one question. And the answer to this question will determine whether you achieve every one of the things you wrote down as answers on this document. And as you can imagine, I was thinking in the back of my head, yeah, sure. One answer to one question. And he leans in and he lowered his voice. He goes, son, are you interested in achieving all of these things, or are you committed to achieving them? And I remember wanting to scratch my head, interested or committed, what's the difference? I just asked him, feeling stupid again. I said, excuse me, Mr. Brown, what's the difference? And here was the game changer. He says, people who are interested come up with stories, reasons, and excuses all the time about why they can't or why it can't be done. And people who are committed upgrade their identity and their beliefs to match the destiny they want, and then they level up their skills and habits to take the action required to achieve every one of their goals. So he says, now that you know the answer, which are you? And he leaned over. I said, well, in that case, sir, I'm committed. And at 19 years young, this was May 1980, to put into perspective, he reaches out his hand, puts my hand in his, in that case, son, I will be your mentor. And I said, wow, thank you, sir. What's a mentor? And that, Ian, was the beginning of my mindset shift to being committed. And then he helped me get my real estate license, which I went to school for 5 weeks, passed the test on my own, which was a miracle in itself. I started selling real estate for him, and he taught me the skills for marketing, to cold call. And then he taught me the skills for doing these things called for sale by owners. And 6 months later, working every day diligently with his tutelage, I made my first 10,000 in a month.
Wow, that's a lot of money back then.
It was a lot, and my father at the time was making 25,000 a year as a cab driver. So Mr. Brown gave me a shift in my perspective, had me answer the question, interested or committed, and then he put me in the environment with the right training to upgrade my skills and to upgrade my behaviors. And then he was able to help me through the management team track and measure what I was doing and tweak and adjust what I was doing until I was locked and loaded for what it took to make 10,000 a month. And I've used the exact same principles with hundreds of thousands of my students, but also in my life over the last 45 years. I built one company at $4.5 billion a year. Another company was worth $2.5 billion on NASDAQ because I took it public. But I used that same thinking, interested or committed, and then reverse engineered the identity, the beliefs, and the strategies to achieve the success. So from there, we can get into anywhere you want.
In this day where information is readily available to everybody on their phones, and most people would say, hey, that sounds great, sounds logical. Why is it that people can agree with this, and yet when it comes to actually putting it into practice, do people lack enough willpower, or what's kind of...
Great question. The area that I've specialized in the last 45 years is behavioral neuroscience, and really understanding the neuroscience and the mechanism by which we not just set goals, but achieve goals. I'll give you an example. When you and I or anybody else that might be listening to us say, well, that sounds great. I'm going to be committed and I'm going to set a goal to make $10,000 a month or an hour or a day, whatever the case is. And I'm committed. What we know is that happens in the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, a part of the brain, right, that can make decisions and even imagine that I'm going to achieve it. So we can do that. But there's another part of the brain called the basal ganglia, and that's where the habits reside of what we're used to thinking and doing is. Now, just because I make a decision to want to achieve a goal doesn't mean that that gets translated into the behaviors, the thinking, the emotions required to actually follow through with new actions. So what happens is most people don't understand that whatever you're earning now, let's say we're talking about money, whether you're investing in the stock market or making X amount of money at work or in your business, everybody has something that we know is a financial set point, a current financial set point. And it works like a thermostat does on, in your home or your car. Whatever the setting is, okay, that's the system that regulates, that setting for homeostasis. Well, let's say you're making 10 grand a day or a month. It doesn't matter. And you want to make 20. Well, if you don't reset the subconscious settings, then you might use willpower for today and tomorrow and the next day. But the setting will always go back to the default mode because that's what's easy and convenient. And there are automatic patterns in the brain that require almost zero energy to implement. That's called automaticity. And so 95% of our behaviors day to day are based on automaticity and automatic behaviors and thoughts and emotions that align with that for our comfort zone. And that's why a lot of people, especially, New Year's resolution people, okay, they have these New Year's resolutions, they're motivated, they're excited, they take the actions. But we know from behavioral neuroscience, it takes 14 days to develop a new pattern in the brain. But it takes between 66 days and 180 days for that pattern to be reinforced enough to override the old automatic patterns. So most people don't have the right process. They have the right motivation. They have the right desire. They have the right reasons why they want to. But most people have never been taught, how do I create and reinforce a habit that matches with the income that I want to make? And we just launched, for example, our neuro fitness platform. And all of my students have to agree to at least training their brain or retraining their brain for 100 days so that we have a real shot of the behavior sustaining itself. So we need to use willpower on the front end, but we also need to do some other things to reinforce the neural patterns. And most people just have the process wrong, and they don't have the skill for it.
Mm-hmm. So are you talking about, a lot of people know of the conscious and the unconscious mind. Are you referring to the unconscious mind? And do our bad habits reside there?
Yeah, so let's go to conscious and either subconscious or non-conscious. We don't want to go to unconscious because that's when we're like knocked out. So the term is really conscious or non-conscious. We're not aware of it, or subconscious. Mm-hmm. So yes, all of our implicit beliefs, all of our habits, our identity, all of our emotions are triggered in the subconscious based on the meaning we have in long-term memory. So yes, that is the part of your brain that you were not born with, your subconscious wired, it's called. Right? So we had potential, but you weren't born with an identity. You weren't born with beliefs. You weren't born with fears. You weren't born with any skills. And so anything that we repeat that's empowering or disempowering, positive or negative, constructive or destructive, becomes wired or soft wired in the subconscious mind. So the art of wanting to earn more income is really no different than the art of wanting to lose 20 pounds and keep it off. Yes, we have to have the right diet. Yes, we have to have maybe some exercise or, thermogenic activity. And yes, we have to maintain that new pattern of releasing the weight or making more money, but making the behavior that gets us the results we want more permanent. And so that just takes some creation and reinforcement of new patterns in the brain. When I work with my clients, and I've got clients who've gone from 0 to $1 billion a year, in revenue in their companies, and hundreds of millions and tens of millions. And the first thing we do is say, okay, what would be the identity of somebody who's already earning that amount of money? What's the identity? Right? Because you and I have an identity, and it's supported by beliefs, right? And it's supported by our facts, and supported by a whole host of associations and a whole host of references. But if we said, okay, you want to make X amount of money, the type of person who makes that amount of money, what is she like? What are his character traits? What are his habits? What does he believe? And we make a list, almost like if you were making a list to create an identity for a Hollywood character, you want to create a list with as much detail as possible. So first we say, here is the objective, the income. Here's the identity. Here are the beliefs, that this person has about his or her ability to earn money, manage money, invest, protect, get out of debt, or use debt as leverage, the 5 pillars of financial success. Here are the habits that this person has and the behaviors that this person consistently does. So we map out what that is, and then we ask ourselves this question: how do I embody these traits so that the income I want to generate is in resonance with my new identity and beliefs and habits? Mm-hmm. And most people leave that part out. And that's why most people are stuck at earning whatever they earn per month, per day, per year, etc. Most people don't go from making 100,000 to a million. Most people do not.
Mhm. Well, why is that? Do they believe that it's not possible, like it's asking too much? Are there things in the subconscious that they're unaware of that sabotage
Of
their
course.
efforts?
There's
Are you ready to get serious about trading? Then join Tasty Trade, Investorpedia's best platform for options trading in 2026. Stocks, options, futures, and more. Tasty Trade has everything you trade, all in one platform. Get low commissions, including zero commission on stocks, so you can keep more of what you earn. Tasty Trade is packed with advanced charting tools, backtesting, a pre-built strategy selector, risk analysis tools, and more features to help you trade smarter. See equities and derivatives with high trading volumes, dividends, upcoming earnings reports, and more with their pre-built watch lists. Or create a custom watch list to keep an eye on the companies and sectors that matter to you. Manage your positions with speed and precision using active trader mode, one-click trading, and smart order tracking. Plus, Tasty Trade's stellar trade desk team offers live support during trading hours if you need it. Visit tastytrade.com/chat for more info. Tasty Trade Inc. is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC.
4 things that get into people's ways. So number one is, and again, we're going to get into a little bit of the neuromechanics of what happens in the brain. And if we're going to talk about the brain, which is my passion, let's first understand this fact. Every brain functionally works the same. Every brain functionally works the same. Like every gas car functionally works the same. Every electrical car functionally works the same. Every bicycle functionally works the same. Every brain functionally works the same. So that's fact number one. So when we're talking about what would prevent me from achieving the goal that I have, and so the first thing I say is there more than enough money in the world? And most people would say, well, of course there is. So there's more than enough money, assets, gold, crypto, whatever you want to call it, stocks, bonds, silver, et cetera, that represent money. So the problem is not that there's not enough. There's more than enough. So now let's find out, what could be preventing me from having more than enough, the amount I want. So number one, when somebody doesn't know how to achieve the income goal they want, they have a lot of self-doubt. I doubt my ability because I don't know how to. So I have self-doubt, which also puts me in a state of uncertainty. In a state of uncertainty, the motivational circuit in the brain shuts off. Why? Because our brain is naturally wired for safety and survival first, and for avoidance of being embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, rejected, or failing. So in the absence of know-how, we revert back to safety and comfort, doing what we know. Number one. Number two, what if going after the income that I want, whether it's through investments or any other type of mean, what if there's a chance I will lose my money? What if there's a chance I will fail? What if there's a chance I make the wrong decisions? What will that do to my self-image, my self-worth, my self-esteem? What will that do to my lifestyle? What would that do putting me behind the eight ball? What would it do to paying my mortgage, my car, my house payment, to my wife, my kid? So our brain is consistently preventing, it's predicting first what potential outcomes are. If there is a potential negative outcome, it puts the brake on behavior, and that's because we haven't learned how to regulate the emotion of fear or being embarrassed or ashamed or ridiculed, judged or rejected or failing. So the issue is not failing. The issue is the meaning we have around failing. The issue is the meaning that my brain is projecting of what might happen if I don't succeed or I succeed and fail. So it's projecting into the future what might happen, but it's feeling the emotion in the present moment. That shuts down the motivational circuit or behavioral cortex. So now we're at 2.
So then, can't we just use our logical mind to? It sounds like it's almost like a battle between our logical mind and our subconscious mind, which generates this fear. Can't we just have a nice little discussion with the two sides of the brain and use our logical mind to persuade the subconscious to go along?
No. Unfortunately, you use your conscious mind to understand what is happening. So yes, we can use behind me. I know nobody can see, but I have above me over my left shoulder, I have the Einstein image and a painting, and to the right of me, I have Frankenstein's monster. These represent two different parts of the human brain. It's both part of the prefrontal cortex. So one part makes a decision, what I want. It can imagine, success. It can imagine the lifestyle. It can imagine the charities. It can imagine the cars, the house, the dreams, and all that stuff. But right next to the left prefrontal cortex, there is the brain's protector. And that is Frankie's monster, I call it. And that part of the brain is overriding the goal desiring mind with the limbic system, emotional mind that's there for safety and protection and survival. So can you be aware that you keep sabotaging your success? Can you be aware you keep procrastinating? Yes. And then the next layer of that is, what is it that I am actually trying to protect? So you can use your logical, smart brain to understand the situation. And then with some techniques, I call them inner size techniques, you can actually shift these subconscious patterns that are running autopilot for protection. So absolutely, and you can do that. And this is where you want to create some daily inner sizes once you're aware of that situation. So far we have fear, we have lack of knowledge and skills, we have beliefs that may be limiting us. And so you say, I want to earn X, but I can't because. And so now we start using, stories and reasons and excuses based on what we believe. And so in the brain, there's two types of beliefs, and most people don't know this. The first one is called an explicit belief. It's a belief that says, well, I believe I can earn that. But there's an implicit belief in the subconscious mind that might also say, but you don't know how to. In the past, when you've tried, okay, you failed. Or when your dad did this, or mother did this, or friend did this, or the other person who invests did this, they failed. So we can have opposing beliefs. We can have beliefs that we say we believe, but if our subconscious belief, the implicit belief, is that I'm too young or too old, it's not the right time, I don't have enough skill, I don't have enough knowledge, whatever reason we have is stronger than the reason why we must, our limiting beliefs will hold us back.
Hence, is that the importance of making the commitment, like you talk about? Because does that help to help our conscious mind to override the limiting beliefs of the subconscious?
Well, just because we're committed doesn't mean we override the subconscious minds. But because we're committed, then we will shift into a state of awareness of what's happening. I'm not taking action. I have it on my calendar and scheduled to do this, and I keep procrastinating. I keep self-sabotaging. Now, when we're committed, we go, okay, I understand something is blocking me. Now let me go deeper than, something is blocking me. What could be blocking me? So yes, we can start using commitment, and a reason why we must achieve the success has to be bigger than the reasons why we're not. Let me repeat that. The reason why we must, commitment, must be bigger than the fear, must be bigger than the limiting belief, must be bigger than the fourth thing, which is my self-image and my identity. So some people have a goal, they have what they want to achieve, but they have a hidden self-image that does not believe they deserve it, or they don't believe, okay, that they're ready for it because of their self-image. So it's either worthiness, deserving, or timing. So any one of these subconscious reasons, with knowledge and skills being both conscious and subconscious, can hold us back and dead in our tracks before we even take action. So yes, we want to set the vision. Yes, we want to set the goals. Yes, we want to create the timelines. And then we want to say, what's the identity that I need to create at the subconscious level? And what beliefs must I have? What behaviors must I have? And what habits must I create that become my automatic way of being? So a perfect example is this. Let's say somebody has on their own earned $1 million, okay? And they've done the work, they've done the trials and the tribulations. Let's say they lose $1 million. They are 10 times, actually 100 times more likely to make that million back than somebody who's won $1 million in the lottery and lost it. Why? Because identity. Somebody who won the lottery doesn't have the beliefs that they can earn the amount of money. They might believe they can win it again, but whatever patterns have been reinforced are the patterns that become automatic. The patterns that become automatic either are aligned with what we call a sympathetic resonance with your vision and goals, or you're going to have an enormous amount of what we call our destructive interference patterns preventing you from achieving those goals. So you'll procrastinate, you'll self-sabotage, you'll start, you'll stop, you'll feel energized, you'll take action, you won't take action, and it'll be all over the place. And we all behave almost entirely congruently with our hidden self-image and identity every single day.
So in the trading world, it can be fairly common for new traders to say, "Hey, I don't have any fear of this. I'm ready to go. I got my account set up. I got $10,000 in the account, and I'm ready to turn it into $1 million this year. And I have no fear. I'm ready to take on big risk." So, what part of the brain does that kind of mentality come from?
It comes from the imagination center, and it comes from the ignorant part of the brain that doesn't know the reality. Like, think about this. How long have you been in the field you're in? How many decades?
Decades.
Right. And how many people in those decades, if we take out the internet heyday, we take out some of the boom markets in real estate or in the stock market, how many people have taken 10,000 turned into $1 million that you know of?
Very, very, very rarely. However, though, these newer traders will say, "But I see them on YouTube
Right.
flashing their Lamborghinis, and I'm not going to let fear stop me."
And I agree, right? And so they have an enormous amount of motive for action. They are being controlled by a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens and insula, which actually releases dopamine in anticipation that they're going to be able to achieve that goal. It's almost the same type of drug mechanism when people fall in love, right? And they don't see, some of the stuff that they see later on. And maybe friends will see, like, that guy, you want to go out with that guy? Don't you see this, and that? Oh my God, no, he's so amazing. Or that girl. And then it's only after the oxytocin burn, is gone, that you go, oh my God, how come I didn't see that? Because we're actually literally dealing with a drugged brain. So a brain that has, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, I'm going to make this money, I'm going to get that car, that Lamborghini, and that person that looks 5 times worse than I do, that has half the IQ that I do, because they're on YouTube, right? We get motivated, but it's a false sense of reality. And so we're blind. Right. And so we're blind. Now, what does decades of experience give you? Hopefully. Right.
Yeah. Wisdom, prudence.
Wisdom. Right. So wisdom. So the odds of that happening. You know how to set the vision and the goals. You know how to look at deals. You know how to analyze a stock. You know how to risk manage. You know how to do that stuff because of experience. And every once in a while, Okay, every once in a while, I have, I think, 104 investments in tech stocks right now. And I got in with a VC fund and I got 3 unicorns in that 104. And that's like, if we had 1 in 104 investments, we would be like jumping for joy. But we've had 3 because of the timing of the AI era. And so I love an enthusiastic person, but an enthusiastic person without skill and experience is dangerous. And a skilled person without enthusiasm is also dangerous. So we want to set the vision, we want to set the goals, but we want to create the internal, environment to allow us to be consistent with the behaviors required for predictable, if we can get predictable results. And investing, I often, when I teach people about making money and we get into the investment modules, I tell people, I said, don't confuse gambling or speculating with investing, because those are the three areas, right? A lot of people gamble, but they say they're investing. If you're going to gamble, gamble. If you're going to be a speculator, you better have a bunch of knowledge, and you're speculating that things are going to go, in your way. And there's experience that'll teach you when you're gambling, and there's experience that'll teach you if you're speculating, and experience in, am I investing or not? And there's rules of the game. And most people don't learn the rules of the game and confuse those 3 investments. And so they make the same decisions the same way for all 3. And it's especially the young, immature investor that confuses investing with gambling and speculating.
So what kind of advice would you give to people who feel fear and they say, well, logically what you're saying, it all makes sense, but I feel it in my bones because of past experiences? Oh, what can people do to hopefully diminish the fear?
Great question. So what we know, right, is all fear, there's 50 different types of fears that could be triggered. So let me give you an example. And usually what you're afraid of is actually not what you're afraid of, right? So let's say somebody has a fear of losing their money, right? So is it really a fear of losing your money, or is it a deeper meta reason, we call it, right? A meta reason. So if I lose my money, then, and let me take you down a couple of channels, what does that mean about me? So is it a fear of losing money that's tied to my identity? Maybe. Is it a fear of losing money that's tied to my livelihood? I got to pay my rent or my car payment, or I need groceries, right? So I can't afford to be in that amount of pain because I don't have an escape plan. So what is it that you're actually afraid of? So if I'm feeling afraid, the first thing to do is understand this. When we have the fear circuit activated, it's called the amygdala, right? It's because our brain in the subconscious mind is associating a negative or painful experience with the thing that we want to do. So I want to invest in this stock. I want to invest in this real estate deal. I want to invest in blank. Now our brain is operating not just in the decision-making part of it, but if I make this investment and I lose it, it already has come up with what does that mean about me and for my life or my kids or my wife or my husband. So it's already projecting, the negative consequences of that decision. And then it releases cortisol, the stress neurochemical, into the bloodstream. And when people feel stress, right, it's when the demand is exceeding the current capacity. Let me repeat that. Stress circuit, fear circuit is only activated when the demand exceeds your current capacity or the capacity that you think you're going to need to deal with the problem. So, but let's deal with the moment by moment release of cortisol. When somebody has doubt, fear, worry, stress, anxiety, or even panic, that means that this circuit is active in the brain. And we have 2 main circuits to be aware of. One is called the sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, freeze. The other is the calm to response circuit, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. Now, in my Amazon #1 best-selling book called Inner Size, let's say I feel fear. If I think about the fear and I feel what I think about, then I'm going to keep re-triggering that circuit. Now, if I just stopped and I took 6 slow, deep breaths in through my nose slowly, fill up my lungs with air, hold it at the top for 3, 2, 1, and I breathe out like I'm breathing out through a straw. So I'm focusing my attention on the airflow coming out of my mouth like it's coming out through a straw. If I just do that 6 times and stay the course, keep the focus in, hold 3, 2, 1, out 3, 2, 1, in 3, 2, 1, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if I do that for 6 inhales and exhales, I deactivate deliberately my sympathetic nervous system. And now I return on my Einstein brain I talked about earlier. Because when we're in this fear state, then the Frankie's monster part of the brain is active. I have to turn Frankie off to give Einstein a chance to be able to do what I call his inner size #2. And that's, okay, what am I afraid of? That's called awareness, intention, and then action. So in a calm state, I can now say, what exactly am I afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of making a mistake. Okay, what specifically am I afraid will happen if I make a mistake? Well, I'm going to lose some or all of my money. And if I lose some or all of that money, what does that mean or say about me? Does it mean or say I'm stupid? I'm not smart? Does it mean what am I really trying to protect? It's called metacognition. And if I can get down to what I'm really trying to protect, okay, is making sure that I don't lose all the money and I get in trouble with my wife, okay, because she doesn't want me investing, right? Or, that I won't have money to pay the mortgage, and that's going to create a whole bunch of stress. So once I know what is it that I'm really trying to protect or move away from, then I could say, okay, is there a way to do this where I lower my risk? Or is there a way to do this, and if I've made a mistake in judgment or timing, which we know happens in investing, how can I recover and or still manage everything so that I'm comfortable? And can I do that? Can I deal with the end consequence if it happens? If yes, great. Now we've just reduced the fear. If no, then we go back to, okay, so what can I do that won't cause me to have so much stress that it shuts down, okay, my brain and my physiology in my body? So now we do that in a calm state where we can actually do what you suggested earlier. Now we have a chance to use our thinking brain to analyze, synthesize, and then come up with real solutions. But we cannot do that, Ian, when we are in that stress state, because our brains become extremely myopic on the problem, on the pain, on the fear, the frustration, on all that stuff. So this is called emotional regulation. And when we learn how to be aware of our emotions, the energy in motion, and now we are deliberate by upgrading our skills of what to do when this happens, now who's in control? My emotions or me?
So that breathwork exercise, is that an example of what you call in your book inner size, or like exercise for our inner being?
Yeah, it's exercise your muscles, with exercise. You exercise your brain, your neuromuscles, to have more self-control, more confidence, more certainty. And there's, 10 main exercises, that I should learn. Like, when you learn how to drive your car, you learn park, you learn drive, you learn neutral, you learn going the highway, you learn going down the street, you learn turning left, you learn turning right, you learn parking. Well, what about learning how to use your brain better, since you own $100 billion asset already, but you don't have the user's manual for it?
In previous videos you've made, you mentioned that the gorilla brain wants safety and harmony. So for us traders, we'd like to know, why does it sometimes choose self-destructive habits like revenge trading? How would that be interpreted as harmony by
Yeah.
the gorilla brain?
Yeah. A lot of times, revenge training is our brain causing us to behave in ways that are aligned with our subconscious mind and what we believe we deserve. That's called self-sabotaging behavior. So think about this. Somebody wins the lottery, 5 million, 10 million bucks, buy a new house, get a new car, give their friends 20 grand, 50 grand, and all of a sudden their 10 million goes to 8 million, to 6 million, to 9 million, to 3 million, to 2 million. And then most people are not aware of this. 92% of lottery winners lose the money within 5 years. Part one. Part two, I think it was 80% of people who won money and lost it said that winning the money was one of the worst experiences of their life. Why? Our brain has to do a few things for us to feel normal. One of those things that it does for us to feel normal is it makes certain that our outside world of results matches our internal expectation points. I'll give you a different example. Somebody wants to lose weight, and they lose weight. They lose 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. Why do over 90% of the people put all the weight back when they want to be healthier, skinnier, feel better, look? Why do they put all the weight back? Is it because they want to put the weight back? No. It's because all the internal mechanisms are wired, their set points are wired to shift all behavior back to baseline homeostasis. The best visual I've ever had, Ian, is just think thermostat. If you have a room set at 70 degrees and really hot air comes in, a signal is sent to the air conditioning unit to turn the air on, right? Until 70 degrees is met. If, let's say, you have a room at 70 degrees and really, really cold air comes in, right? And the temperature goes down to 62. Well, the signal gets sent to the heater, turn the heat on until 70 is met. It's called a cybernetic mechanism. You and I and every other human being, remember, every brain works the same, has something called a psycho-cybernetic mechanism. Maxwell Maltz was one of the first to write about it in his book called Psycho-Cybernetics back in the 70s. And so we all have these baselines. And so when people, let's say, make more money than they're used to, a lot of times they will self-sabotage and lose the money over the next week, month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
In your program, do you have any kind of questions or tests that help people uncover these self-limiting beliefs that is in their subconscious that they may be totally unaware of?
Yeah, when people go to myneurogym.com, one of the first things we offer everybody for free is a neurofitness assessment. And in that neurofitness assessment, it gives them two things. Number one is, what brain type are you? And it gives you a score in one of the 5 brain types. And then you're going to get your dominant, brain type and subdominant brain type. But it'll also score your 7 core neuromuscles. One of the 7 core neuromuscles, for example, is your critical thinking skills and your decision-making process. And if your critical thinking skills are strong, great. If they're weak, you're in trouble, right? If your decision-making skills are strong, great. If they're weak, then great. And then in our programs on our neurofitness platform, which we literally just launched with 40 AI coaches in there to coach people as well, is we're going to be creating a slew of assessments, neurofitness assessments on beliefs, on habits, on emotions, on cognition speed. So we literally just launched this to the world in the last 2 weeks, and we're putting the final touches on it for our massive PR campaign. So yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's touch a little bit about goals. People are so used to making New Year's resolutions. It's in January. And what are some of the key things that we should know about when creating goals and the problems that arise?
80% of people give up on their goals by February the 8th, but they set January 1st, 80%. Goals setting happens in the prefrontal cortex part of the brain, the imagination part of the brain, and it's the part of the brain that chooses what we want and why. Goal achieving happens as a result of the hippocampus, long-term memory, and the basal ganglia. And these are just parts of the brain that do different things. Just like you have your hand does a different thing than your elbow does, and your knee does something different than your ass does. You have different parts of your brain. They do different things. And most people don't think of their brain the way I want them to think about it. I want you to think about your brain like you would an orchestra, right? You are the conductor, right? And the conductor says, we're going to play this song. That's the goal. Then the conductor's job, right, is to get the different musicians to play in concert, in harmony, in flow. And so the question becomes, do you know how to get your brain in concert, in harmony, in flow between your conscious mind setting goals, the limbic system, emotional mind having the reasons why I want to achieve it and how phenomenal it's going to be, and the imagination saying this is going to be epic and phenomenal? Do you know how to translate the sheets of music to the other parts of the brain that are responsible for taking consistent action? And most people look at me like deer in headlights because they've never been taught this. So I'll give you an example. Whenever I set a new goal, okay, which I do, first I start off with the vision of what is life going to be like when that goal is achieved. And I write it down. And I write it down starting with this language. I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I have now achieved the goal of blank. And as a result of achieving my goal of blank, I feel this and I'm doing this and I'm helping this and I'm going here and I'm experiencing this. And I write out a whole story like a Hollywood script, part one. Now I have the story. And now, how do I become the story? So I'll give you a visual I take all my clients through. Let's say somebody tapped you on the shoulder because you're at the gym, you're at a friend's party, you're at a coffee shop, but they tap you on the shoulder and go, hey, I just read this Hollywood script. And it stars Sylvester Stallone, Barbara Streisand, and I don't know, Russell Crowe, I don't know, whatever. And you would be great for this 5-minute piece. And they're looking for somebody just like you. If we give you this script, we pay you $1 million. Will you learn the script and meet us in Hollywood in 6 months to film? You might be scared and, oh my God, I'm going to get a chance to act with all these people. I got this 5-minute script. Like, what can 5-minute script? What would you do to learn and be that script?
Do whatever it takes. Revolve my whole life around.
Too nebulous. What would you give me specifics of what you would do?
Oh, I would practice. I mean, integrate it into my life so that every day, for a minimum number of hours per day, I'm doing that. I'm practicing, like it's
Great.
my most important thing that I'm going to do.
So, would you read it a few times a day?
Oh yeah, read it over and over and over. 20, 30 times a day. Yeah.
You might record it and listen to it. You might get your camera out and practice the role. You might do research on the role, but you'd probably do something every single day to prime your brain, to train your brain to be the role. First, it would take conscious effort, but then with spaced repetition, practice makes permanent. Right? And perfect practice makes perfect. So with repetition every day for the first month, maybe 2 hours a day, maybe an hour a day, the second month, maybe half an hour a day, maybe the third month, half an hour a day, maybe a little bit every single day, you'd be firing and wiring this new script you never saw before. And you would embody the identity, the beliefs, the character traits of the script. So that when the camera came on, it's 3, 2, 1, go. You wouldn't need the script because you've become the script. The way you develop the identity for the income you want to make, for the trader you want to be, for the lifestyle that comes with it, for the confidence and the certainty and the personal power, is you practice it and rehearse it in your mind and in your emotions every single day. And then you take a little bit of action every day to practice the role. So on my desk, I've been doing this for 45 years. I not only have my exceptional life blueprint that's 67 pages long with my entire life in here, with pictures of my family, the life that I'm living, in our home, the physique that I have today versus what I had. But I have it written out, all my top goals, my story of my life that's 3 pages long. And every day I practice it in private so I get praised in public for what I do. So I think of my life like an athlete would think of her life. You practice in private or with other people, so when it's game time, you're playing to win.
Fantastic. This all sounds very inspirational. John, I'd like to thank you for coming on Chat with Traders.
Thank you so much. It's been great coming on with Traders, and I'll give everybody a little a free book called Inner Size Your Way to Success that you can give everybody as my gift.
Fantastic. And how can our listeners reach you?
First thing they should probably do is go take the neurofitness assessment at myneurogym.com. And by the time this airs, everything will be in place, myneurogym.com. And then I'm on social media on Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn, et cetera.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Ian.
By the way, the free copy of the book that John mentioned can be found in the show notes of the podcast platform that you're listening from. Or if you have issues finding it, feel free to email us at hello@chatwithtraders.com. Thanks for listening again.
You've reached the end of this episode of Chat with Traders. But rest assured, there are more episodes loaded with real market insight and zero hype on the way soon. So to stay updated with each great new release, subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. And we'd love it if you'd leave a rating and review. We'll catch you next time on Chat with Traders.